Okay, yeah, the thing is that I made the film about, I think we shot it 4.5 years ago.
Right.
And it took about a year to edit and like post-production. And since then I've like made another film, which took a couple of years, and then last week I shot another film. So I'm just off of the back of that. And I guess in my whole process as a filmmaker, I've kind of like moved a little bit ahead of this one, so it was a little bit difficult for me to rewatch it, although you told me to please revisit it, but I just couldn't get myself to do it. But through, or based on memory, I've made these notes regarding the genesis and I guess conception, and I guess we could discuss where I am now with the process.
Yeah. Let's just flow with it. I mean, like my reason for for picking this film is I was looking for filmmakers with a strong voice, somebody who had like taken a few chances, and whether you like the film or not. Here, it was about somebody who was taking a few risks, which I felt you've done with this. I actually wanted to like get started, with the question about how like an artist, sometimes like walks the line between sort of endorsing a point of view and being able to to critique a point of view. And in in this film you managed to create this this character who has a certain outlook towards society and particularly towards women. He has a certain gaze, and through him you also have a certain gaze. And I wanted to talk to you about how aware are you of that gaze, and how like deliberate is it an attempt to look at people and to look at women a certain way. If you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely deliberate. Basically it's like if I were to have a little bit of a flashback, I met a sadhu. I spent some time in Banaras, and I spent where I had this encounter with an Agori, and I spent many days with him. And somehow this guy was like, he was a bit dangerous to be around, but he was a bit of an enigma and highly misogynistic. But at the same time, like he captivated me for some strange reason. And of course, when I left, like this guy just remained in my head for a while. And then I moved to Bombay. I just moved to Bombay, and I think before moving here, or maybe just about the time I moved here, it struck me maybe like what would be interesting to have such a character in a city environment, because it's sort of outside of the social milieu he belongs to, where he's a bit of a gangster almost. And then I think over time, because I just about started working in Bombay, I used to work with Ahtesham, and I sort of started drawing parallels between sadhus, this sadhu character, and being filmmakers, because I felt like they're equally manipulative and have a bit of a similar gaze on subjects and sort of this city life. And then it kind of struck me almost that what if these two characters meet in a film, and that sort of pretty much led to where what you see here. I guess it's a little bit play on documentary and fiction comes in there, which is that is the filmmakers also putting on a part, and it's not just the ambiguity isn't just in front of the camera, it's also in the crafting itself, that whose worldview is authentically represented on screen.
What I find most fascinating, for lack of a better word, here is that there is something in mainstream film writing called the unreliable narrative. So when that unreliable narrator starts telling you the story and starts shifting, you don't know which of his truths to really believe. And Hitchcock has sometimes used the unreliable narrator really well. Over here I saw two levels of it. You were first you've cast someone called Ahtesham
That's right.
as a sadhu. So when I see that name in the credit, I'm like, okay, this guy's definitely not a sadhu.
Yeah.
So what am I watching? Am I watching complete fabrication, or am I watching someone trying to subvert a particular medium, and then you doing that with the footage within the film makes you an unreliable narrator too? There's two levels of it.
Yeah, like the meta film nature of the film, like the film within the film. That's it.
But it goes beyond meta, because it's I don't know what I'm
Yeah.
watching. If I'm
Yeah,
watching
exactly.
Yeah.
fiction, then you can put a finger on the meta.
Yeah.
But here I can't.
I guess it was. I guess I can like sort of, jump off what you were discussing about your film regarding this recreation or
Yeah.
refabrication. I guess we're calling it docu-fiction cinema, but I mean I'm of the strong opinion that there's really no like phrase or term to coin. I mean it's a little bit of in this liminal space that that is quite indefinable. But I guess for me, it's kind of closest to this ethno-fiction style of filmmaking. I mean, I guess not in this Robert Gardner way where you go in like to this tribal area and you document, I would guess like this Kiarostami ethno-fiction, which is recreation. You get the actors or get someone real life to recreate events that they've already gone through. But I guess on one level, yes, and then like the added layer would be okay. We create a narrative. I create a character, and I create all these dramatic situations. But then I get to document the performer in the process of coming up with the acting. So in a way, the actor is remaining an actor. So it kind of gets looped back into being an ethno-fiction. Let me. Sorry, I'm in a bit of flow. And then that's where the kind of like you kind of viewing the film twice, once as an audience and then the second time as the filmmaker making the film. So it's kind of like this film twice perceived. And I guess like the ultimate, I guess if you were to give it a reason, it's also sort of tying back into what you were talking about, this sort of satire. I could call it a satire in many ways. It may lack it has some sense of humor, but because it's a bit of a prank anyway. But when in my opinion, when you make a satire of a film that is a satire, then the satire has to include a commentary on cinema itself. Otherwise, for me, it's a bit falling short. So it's also adding that extra layer of making the viewer conscious of the experience.
Like which you do with the, like when you cut to the FCP, which is where it becomes meta. I mean, I'm not sure if all satire has to be like referential to cinema per se.
I don't think it has to be, but this is my approach, and I feel strongly about my work doing that. But I guess like the laptop screen is quite interesting. And then sort of going back to your earlier question, which is like, I guess initially it could be like this philosophy that Tarkovsky talked about as cinema, which is cinema being this mosaic of time, which is basically, when you record on a camera, the moment you press action, you document something and then you cut. And then even if it's a period piece and like everyone in costume and all, and regardless of that take works for you or doesn't work for you, you sort of documented a moment in time. So in that essence is always quite authentic. And then cinema is about like chopping up these documents and creating this almost false narrative. So in my approach, it's like, what if I were to keep the entire shot, which is the stuff that isn't supposed to be in the cinema, and then complicate it even more, which is to add drama to it, and then have succession of dramatic shots coupled with these kind of documents in time, and then maybe complicate it a little bit more, which is to add the idea of screens. So you watch within the cinematic experience, which is kind of this Deleuzian philosophy of, how like it's this, how screens, it's like this libido and technology and this interlink between the two. And then maybe complicate it a little bit more, which is to make the viewer, aware of the film, but also fictionalize the filmmaker. So that's kind of like kind of like I don't know, whatever. Like this random thoughts.
One thing that sort of is ringing true to me
Yeah.
in all that you said is the fact that you're playing a prank, and that there's many levels of prank. You're sort of playing a prank on the medium, on the chosen subject in the medium, on the person who chose that subject, and how the person who chose that subject and the subject and the relationship they have. And you're playing a prank on us and our cultivated understanding of how these things should be. Was that a primary intent with this film? I'm trying to understand what was that primary intent that drove you to do this, other than just figuring it out.
No, it's not just. I mean, it's working at different layers. It's a commentary on urban life. It's also a commentary on masculinity. You know, it's sort of going back to this commentary.
Yeah.
So it's also a commentary on filmmaking within that. So it's not just one or the other, but can I cohesively make an experience?
There is all of these.
There's
things.
all of these things in one. So yeah.
I mean, like for me, the experience of like watching the film, which is why I love the form, was whether, like you don't know whether you're inside the outside or outside the inside.
Yeah.
It's inception.
So I'm
And that's kind of like a little bit of my personality also, which is this like hyper self-aware, which is this inside-outside thing that, okay, like I'm talking right now and there's like all these people and like I've kind of seen all the faces, but but I'm also like kind of getting to my mind, I guess.
No, a
maybe.
film like this, more than a simple narrative, does reflect more the personality of the filmmaker.
Yeah, exactly. And I think
I'd
that
like
at the
people
time,
here to ask you about that, I'm sure.
at the time, it was a little bit nascent. But I mean, of course, I would never have been able to talk in such detail if you asked me while I had made the
4.5
film
years ago.
4.5 years ago. But I think I've really like deep dived into this, like, this kind of way of filmmaking and this using cinema as this tool, where I have drama, I have these like documents in time, and then I have like this digital screen culture, and how I can like use these cinematic devices, if I can call them that. To comment on themes that are around me, but also how these devices interact with each other within a film. So it's kind of like in this space. I guess that's it. Like I guess you could say that what you were talking about earlier, which is it's not even a question about what is documentary or fiction. It's like what is reality. And like you could define reality as this like this how outside data is, or our perception or interpretation of outside data within our consciousness. So whenever we watch a film, the emotions we feel are not void of the experiences we've had outside of the film. So it's kind of like there. It's in this very liminal, indefinable space. I can go on talking, but it's just about like tapping into it kind of instinctively.
Anybody?
So there's this concept in theatre. It's by Bertolt Brecht. It's called alienation. When they put up a play, it has a fiction, but suddenly they just switch on all the lights and the audience can see each other, and they stop the play, they break away, they have another section that is completely unrelated, and then they get back into the fiction and the lights dim down. So they basically do that to like just shake up the audience, remind them that don't just watch this as fiction, there's something more to it. You are here together with each other and like try to think about what's happening on stage. So I really love those plays, and I was a part of one down in Bangalore that was like based on the concept. So I've never seen that happen in the film. Like as soon as it zoomed out into that laptop screen, I felt that. Like, I was like, I've never seen that kind of concept on film. So I think what you're trying to like portray is also, you could look into Bertolt Brecht's theory.
Yeah, of course.
I think it would like really, you'd relate to it.
Thank you. But you have to watch. Is anyone seen Buddha or a movie? Maybe not. Yeah,
I have.
You have. So it's kind of like I think I've been able to, I don't know, sophisticate a little bit more in following work.
We'll hear you, man. You're quite.
Alright, Kabir. Hey. Interesting film. I'm not sure it's entirely up my alley or my cup of tea, really. But I see what you're doing. There's meta, there's Bertram Dung effect, alienation, implicating the filmmaker into the narrative. questioning that, so on and so forth. So I don't know if I'm asking you a question. I'm building the film in my head, and it's not entirely earnest for me. Neither the filmmaker nor the actor playing the character. I don't know. I'm just extending the film in my head and imagining another scene after that last audition scene, where the actor goes on to win a Best Actor award at a festival, and you're also documenting that. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of
Is it a
sense.
question?
It makes a lot of sense. I guess earnestness.
I mean, if you are including yourself into the film, I'm projecting myself into your.
Yeah, I
character
totally
also.
get it. So, and
I
that's
have
the.
I believe I can have that right.
No, it's not even right. I mean, you're here for that.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's interesting because the first time we played at a festival, we won an award, and we were chatting the next day on a video call, and he's like, "Oh wait, am I getting Best Actor as well?" And I was like, "I hope so," but
He didn't know you were making
no, he made
documentary.
No, he knew we were making,
Okay.
except maybe he didn't know I was trying to get into this like very like
Right.
subliminal space.
A Spinal Tap, Close Up. There's many films in
There's
this.
way too many
Award
films.
by the way.
Yes,
Kiarostami.
of course.
Kiarostami is a big influence. I guess Imamura
Nice.
made a film called A Man Vanishes, the Japanese film, which has had a huge influence. Holy Mountain. I watched a film once called 10 Minutes Older by Hertz Frank, and basically it's like a 10-minute, it's like a close-up of this kid in a theater, and it's called 10 Minutes Older, and basically it starts, and you watch 10 minutes and it's over, and then he's like 10 minutes older. So,
436 by John.
433.
33. Yeah.
That's interesting. I have actually a personal anecdote to add to 433. When I used to work with Ahtesham, we made a film called Events in a Cloud Chamber, which was a recreation of a film that Akbar Padamsee made. It got kind of stolen. Long story short, there was a lady who worked on the sound, Geeta Sarabhai, and she belonged to the Sarabhai family. And we traced her down, except she was no more. But we managed to get in touch with some foundation that had archived her work. But it was interesting that she had taken this Indian aesthetic to New York at the time. She was extremely privileged. And she got to hang out with John Cage. And she actually taught him about silence. So the 433 was kind of has this like very like Indian inspiration. But yeah, 433 is a good reference.
Close Up is what is one of my favorite films.
Yeah.
And it is in that similar.
It's in a similar gene pool, but I'd say like it's kind of like I guess what I've been trying to do at the time. Maybe I don't know how far I succeeded, but what I've been trying to do is how do I build up from all of this like film theory, film philosophy. It's not about, I'm not trying to follow it, but I'm trying to like build up and seeing where it goes. So I guess here it was like, okay, the film itself is experiment. The next time the experiment carries on post the film between the reaction and the interactions, and I guess if we ever do that, if we can.
I think I have a question now for
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
From this, sorry.
Yeah.
Do you think you can find a real life equivalent and remake the film in a certain mode? I'm not saying that you have.
Yeah, I have the next one called Buddha or movie. Yeah.
That follows from
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Oh,
You should see it deeper.
okay.
And it is an extension, and it is,
Yeah.
I mean, you're working on
Yeah.
that approach and
Yeah.
refining it. I have a very basic question. So when this film is shown at festivals, and what do they like slot it as? Like, is it like shown in the short docs or the short fiction?
It's
or
been
festivals?
shown in everything. Short doc, short fiction,
Yeah.
experimental.
Right.
First time we showed an experimental festival, I was like, wait, am I an experimental filmmaker? Because when you go to experimental film festival, wait, I don't belong here. But then I guess I realized that I was a little bit up in my head, and I didn't realize that it's a little bit far removed from traditional narrative. So it's in all, it's been fitted in all. And I used to initially fight it, but I'm like, no, let them play it and whatever,
Anybody?
How much of it do you script? Because I watched AABOBO
Yeah.
and I was left at the end the same way, because I'm like, I don't know, is it fiction, is it doc? Somewhere I want it to be fiction because I don't want it to be
Yeah.
real. So like, how much of it do you like really write out before you start, or like is it research? Like what is your like process?
See, this is for me. It's a bit of a philosophical question. That what is documentary, what is fiction, what is truth, and what is lies. what is morality, what are ethics, what is how is moving image media related to social media, or how cameras are different from how cameras and recording devices are different from laptop screens as recording devices. So it really I can get quite deep into that, but I create the experience for you to kind of decipher on your own. I would be kind of like not doing you justice. I mean, the whole point of cinema is a reaction, or this like suspension of disbelief or disillusion of this disbelief, or either or. So taking from that, it's open to interpretation.
See, what I gather is like there is a lot of influences that you have of various filmmakers.
Yeah.
My question is like, say, during the making of the film, did you ever get like, say, have a feeling, ki, I have so many influences, where is Kabir Mehta?
No.
Because that's influences now.
It's difficult to say, right? It's like it's such a subconscious thing. Like everything we interact, the way I speak or your question itself, is based on your previous experiences and how you've dealt with different situations, including the medium. They're so deeply buried that no. So.
Okay, so you never.
No. Yeah. I guess like lots of the theories, like in retrospect, like like I'm saying, it's not like what I'm making. It's kind of like really intuitive. Yeah.
Have you ever imagined yourself as a character, like?
Yeah, yeah.
And somebody is approaching you, like, I want to shoot you, and like in a scripted. So
Yeah.
will you be like there to act?
Yeah, good question. I guess like I'm always like inhabiting some kind of or embodying some kind of a character in all the films.
That depends on the director, no?
Yes, but like I'm the director, but I'm also in the cast. If you see, so it's kind of like this duality between, the way I see it is, and it's kind of the way I see it is also like in sync with your thought, your sentiment, which is that. Like I view filmmakers as the antagonists always.
So my question is simple. Will you accept the like?
No one's come to me, so I'll have to like wait. But I was getting into something a little bit more deeper. So what I was trying to say was that filmmakers as antagonists, which is these essentially when you open up a camera and what you were talking about earlier, and this like line between what would have happened and what the moment you set up a camera, you've altered the course of history. So whether you throw the chicken in or not throw the chicken in, you set up a camera there. So you already altered everything. Yeah. This whole cinema verity thing for me died long time ago. There was no such thing. Like Robert Gardner going and making his movies, and then like this like very like British Ivy League commentary going on, and then there's like we're assuming it's multiple cameras, but it's been shot over, and then like then they have like this guy being the protagonist in the movie, but then you realize that it's like a dub from this British guy,
Yeah.
So, and like he made that Indian film also in Banaras. I'm forgetting what it's called.
That feels quaint almost.
Yeah, it's a little bit outdated. So it's like this, that's how I see. It's kind of like, but I guess like initially when I made the films, this film and the one Buddha Roy movie, I was a bit more pessimistic about cinema. But I guess over time, I just made a film in last week, and it's interesting how it became a tool of it became a cathartic tool for me. I was dealing with it a little bit. So, and it's interesting how the screens are used in this film to create this sort of dystopia, technological dystopia, but how in this new film it's kind of the other way around. And actually I could loop that into this whole Tarkovsky mosaic of time I was talking about. And it's like kind of deals with TikTok. I've been really getting into TikTok nowadays. And how like, it's like, Tarkovsky says it's a document of time. And I guess like TikTok is this like constant stream of documents in time, because there's really no agenda. It's just like people documenting life and like streaming it out. And it's kind of like become now for me like, what does cinema have any value compared to that? It's like emancipated the whole idea of documentation. Anyway. before I rant on more.
You talked about reaction, so I couldn't get the answer. You believe in public's reaction, audience reaction or not?
Do I believe in it? What do you mean?
Like you said, you were talking about about public's reaction. So you believe it in or not? Or you said like, I make the film, now it's on you. Like you like it, you understand it or not?
No,
It's not my duty, like kind of.
What can I know?
Like I direct, design and direct for theatre, not films, and I write also. So
No, I wasn't laughing at. I was just laughing at my inability to answer it immediately. But what did you feel of the film?
Because like you said, what you it was like very early stage of your as a filmmaker career as a filmmaker. So and when you're talking also today also, like earlier I was relating to myself also. I used to, my first play was like Endgame of Beckett. So like, most of the people today don't understand reference, but I was like, if I'm teasing them, I am irritating them with the silence. I want them to, because I want my audience who is listening to me. I don't want people who cannot. So I used to like unconsciously tease them. Now it's happening when I've written my next play. I'm more into public reactions. I have not performed from last 2 months. I'm just narrating 2-3 people and everybody is laughing, and I'm like finding it like, yeah, I am going in the right space, because when audience is there in the auditorium, he or she or whatever the audience should get entertained and engaged. After that comes the filmmaking, because when we see so much and don't see live, the content somewhere, the filmmaking or theatre, every craft overpowers the content. Here also most of the reactions are relating to the craft. Nobody is like, okay, I connect to this person. So that's happening. Like that's what my thoughts are like more or like you only, that they are like wayward. But hope you understood my question.
I understood it.
Like basically it's like your craft is overpowering your content. You feel that because whenever you also talked about not about life, but the filmmakers, names of the filmmakers. Reactions were also like that. They were asking like, what is the craft? Why you did that in the end? Alienation theory and all. Because alienation has also happened many times.
Yes.
Like in funny games we have seen, and alienation is a bit different thing. This was not alienation. Alienation is like when you do an alienation not in the craft, but the actor himself is doing.
I mean, I guess it's a little bit of a difference of opinion. I don't think, I mean, that it's true, what you're saying is true, but it's a bit limiting the way I see it, that I could.
I'm not passing any statement.
I know that.
Yeah.
So, it is about the craft, and I kind of like to make these films that are a little bit of this like they're kind of like puzzles. So it requires a bit of a repeat watching. So the first time is always a reaction to the craft, because it's kind of consciously there in the front.
The immediate reaction is craft, but
and it's kind of like revisiting the same material for it to sort of like for other themes to surface for the first time or resurface, or how you can repurpose the same shot with a different emotion. So that's the idea. It would be kind of like a little bit daunting for Devashish to screen it again right now. But
no, there's a reason. There's a reason. Today's event is called a misfit. Misfits in a misfit medium, because a film like this is my first response to it was, it's a work in transit. It's a filmmaker who has got all these preoccupations. He's not really thinking about what the audience will feel. He's experimenting in a medium that's allowing him that full experimentation to see where he will end up. So it's almost like a meditation for a filmmaker. And the short as a medium, and a short dog even more, allows you that. You don't walk into Bombay and like the only option for me is to go to a studio and make a film with them. It's like, I'm going to find a way to meditate on my preoccupations, and they may or may not be palatable to a wider audience. But to see it as a work in transition, I think is empowering, because then you do what you want to do in the era of the technology that is at your disposal. So now if he's saying his third film, he's exploring TikTok, I find that I may not like the film, but the liking the film is not the point.
Yeah, sure.
The point is he's making a comment on something, and I might walk away with something that might texture my choices from then on, whether I like the film or not. To be very honest, I don't know if I like this film or not, but that the work in transition made me think of 20 things that I wouldn't have thought about if I had not seen this film. So for me, that was worth celebrating. The fact that it's such a misfit, you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I think validation is not really the end result necessarily. But
It's not even the driving force.
Yeah,
It was not
some
about
driving
validation, it
force.
was
No,
about
but sure,
like-
we got you. And it's a complicated question,
Yeah.
you'll get a complicated answer. And it'll be in pieces.
I have two questions actually. One comes from something you said. I was actually trying to figure out what is the intent of the film. But you said it was a commentary on masculinity. Now the idea of gender intrigues me a lot. So I felt like, and you said that this, you're looking at it after 4 years or whatever, the period of time. Do you think in making this commentary on masculinity, you have sort of ignored the feminine perspective? Because you cannot make commentary on one gender by denying the perspective of another gender. And if you did look at it, so I would like to understand if you were sort of neutral in your perspective, and if you are.
No, I don't think I was neutral at all. I was quite. See, it's like this. It's kind of like. So there's masculinity, which is our character embodies a man, and including the filmmaker as well, and I'm kind of dealing with very dystopic themes, and for me, as a man, the dystopia kind of is kind of the worst you can get when there's a complete absence of femininity within it. So it's kind of consciously creating a space where it's kind of like what Devashish was saying, where you get a thought that, hey, what does the world look like? Is this what it's going to look like? And especially when you infuse it with this with technology. So yeah, it's quite deliberate.
And second question, I always find it very interesting when we use sexual content in cinema.
Yeah.
So you use that MMS.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe I've not understood it, but I don't know what the place of that clip in the film is. Right?
The place as in the
As
location?
in, no, like
Its
why
purpose?
that did it need to exist in the film. And second, I don't know where the clip came from or whatever. So
Oh, that's
movie
me.
has-
So that's Saurabh. But
that's you and somebody else, right?
no, that's both of them are me.
Huh?
Both of them are me. It's a joke. It's a joke. No, but it's a good question, I guess, maybe. See, I guess it's like this. It's kind of like stems from this kind of delusion philosophy about libido and technology and these surfaces that were kind of these. I mean, mine is kind of cracked, but I guess this one is kind of intact. These oh wow, sort of, the voyeur, Devashish.
Not me, man. Someone there.
I wish I had known. Anyway, but it's like these very seductive screens, right? That we're all constantly interacting with, and it's kind of like it's a little bit of an intellectual idea, which is documentation and how far voyeurism goes and how far how explicit can we be in cinema itself, but then what if the explicitness isn't within the cinema but within a screen that is within the cinematic experience, and then kind of like looking at the mobile as a recording device, and then basically it's like how is the cinematic camera the recording device, or is the mobile an equivalent of a recording device? And then in the end you see is the laptop screen itself a recording device? So it's a little bit of a play on these different mediums. It's less about the MMS per se, but kind of like how sexuality and technology play off of each other within a cinematic context. So you have this anonymous MMS, but then you also have these anonymous Facebook posts, and then you have this kind of very vague FCP edit in the end, which is it's a little bit of a gimmick, but the gimmick is only because did this really happen, or was this like an impromptu decision? So yeah.